Hi, welcome to our channel Mansa Tutorials. This is Mansa, came here to teach class 10's biology. So today we are going to discuss class 10's biology first chapter, that is what? Nutrition, the food supplying system. So today we are going to discuss how this food is useful, how this nutrition is helpful in living, means how it is helpful. So every organism required food or required energy to maintain their growth and repair works of the body. At the same time, several other organisms, few organisms also required not only for growth and repair but also for maintaining their body temperature. Some organisms require their food. From unicellular organisms like amoeba till multicellular organisms like human beings, every organism has their own mode of nutrition. So when we say human organisms, it's a multicellular organism. Different cells require different forms of food. So as human beings are multicellular, each cell has required different food as food substances. Okay, so some cells required oxygen, some cells required carbon. Some cells required some other food substances as nutrition. So all when we have previously studied in our classes, that is mode of nutrition is of how many types? Two types. So it can be of autotrophs means depending on food, autotrophs and heterotrophs. What are autotrophs? They can prepare their own food. What are heterotrophs? They depend on other organisms for their food. So autotrophs, what type of mechanism they use? Autotrophic nutrition. So today we are going to discuss in our class regarding autotrophic nutrition. So when we are seeing this autotrophic nutrition, here the organisms which are involved in autotrophic nutrition, what they do is they use the source of light and also some minerals and nutrients from soil, water and from surroundings. They use these all components and they prepare their food. So using these all simple inorganic components, they prepare complex compounds as their final product, like glucose, cholesterol, lipids, fats, proteins, etc. These all were produced from this. Means these complex compounds were produced in this autotrophic nutrition. So when these complex compounds are produced, they are also useful for other organisms which depend on them. So they may not directly produce highly complex form, but moderately. First initially they produce some complex substance from which highly complex substances were produced. Like initially they produce glucose. You think they may produce glucose. From glucose they produce highly complex substances like starch, cellulose, lipids, proteins, etc. So other plants or other organisms, other organisms which are depending on plants for food, so these substances will be useful for them to use. In the same way, most of us, what we are eating today, we may get most of the part from plants. And if we are even depending on animals, even they indirectly depend on plants. So the animals, they depend on plants, and that animals ultimately we are taking. So you imagine that we eat meat, but the goat eats what? Plants. So indirectly, whatever food source today we are having, we are getting them from what? Plants. So what these plants perform? These plants perform photosynthesis to produce food. So n number of scientists worked on this process of how plants are producing food. On this process, n number of scientists have worked that how this autotrophic nutrition process is taking place in plants. So many scientists worked how this plant's life process is going on. So we know that important process what is taking place in plants is what? Photosynthesis. Because of this photosynthesis, plants have become what? Universal producers, universal food producers, or else even energy producers. Plants are what? Universal energy producers or universal food providers, isn't it? Because if we depend on animal, that animal is indirectly depending on plants. So what is happening? They are the universal food providers. They are the universal energy providers, producers of energy. Plants are called what? Producers of energy. So how this process is taking place? This photosynthesis. So in class 8, we have seen von Helmont have performed, scientists along with von Helmont have performed some experiments on what? Photosynthesis. So in that process, what they came to know? That plant is getting nutrients or some help not only from soil, but there are even some other sources from which plant is getting nutrients or minerals. So that's what they have proved in that experiment. So can you imagine what are the raw materials used in photosynthesis? Yes, they can be like light, carbon dioxide, water, etc. So can you tell what will be the end product of a photosynthesis? So now we will see what will be the end products of this photosynthesis, how this process of photosynthesis will take place in plants. So photosynthesis is the process in which one of the major important pigment is involved. That is what? Chlorophyll. Yes, that is chlorophyll. This chlorophyll helps in forming this higher molecules or highly complex molecules. So along this chlorophyll, along with the help of some inorganic components, some simple inorganic components, and along with sunlight, this chlorophyll will produce highly complex or compounds. So chlorophyll along with sunlight as source of energy and some inorganic components together forms or produces what? Produces complex molecules. It produces complex molecules. So means these simple nutrients in presence of simple molecules or simple nutrients, inorganic molecules in presence of sunlight with the help of this chlorophyll will produce what? Complex molecules. So will produce complex molecules. Now we will see how that process will take place. So when we come to this photosynthesis, it's a complex process. Here n number of intermediate products were formed. It is not so simple process. So it has n number of intermediate products formed. So scientists were trying to formulate a simple equation for this from 200 years. From 200 years onwards, they were trying to give a simple formula for this. But finally, we have seen von Nile have given in the year 1931 one formula for this photosynthesis. Right now, that is the thing which we are using. So that is the one which is modified and further was used here. But though it is not a 100% accurate equation, but still it is a accepted equation provided. Means that that equation is provided, highly accepted. Okay, it can be accepted. It was informed like that. So what, according to von Nile, in the year 1931, what he has said is for every one molecule of carbohydrate, one molecule of oxygen and one molecule of hydrogen is evolved. So that is what he has stated. But what we have discussed in this chapter, in the process of photosynthesis, complex molecules will be produced. That is like glucose, something should be produced. But here in the equation what we are showing on the screen, when we see here what is the product from CH2O, that is carbohydrate. CO2, water in presence of sunlight and chlorophyll will provide carbohydrate, and what is that? One molecule of water and one molecule of oxygen. This is what formulated by von Nile. But as it is not showing the complex compound, that is C6H12O6, that is what? Glucose. Here glucose is not shown in the equation. So for this, the provided equation by von Nile is balanced and produced a new equation. That means this equation is balanced equally, and we have given one final equation. So before going to this, von Nile initially performed this with one type of bacteria. Von Nile performed this with purple sulfuric bacteria. So here instead of H2O he has used H2S, and he found that sulfur gas is evolved. So he said the same equation will be proposed for photosynthesis where oxygen is evolved. But later on Robert Hill performed experiment and he proved that oxygen is evolved from hydrogen, water. From water molecule the oxygen is evolved. He said that equation. So Robert Hill modified this equation, that is 6CO2 plus 12H2O in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll will provide C6H12O6 plus 6CO2 plus 6H2O and 6O2. So this is the equation provided by Robert Hill. So the balanced equation of Van Nile. So what Van Nile proposed? What is Van Nile's equation? As per Van Nile, CO2 plus 2. So this is Van Nile equation, that is CO2 plus 2H2O in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll will give CH2O, that is carbohydrate, plus H2O plus O2. This is what equation given by Van Nile. But Robert Hill modified that oxygen is evolved from water molecule. So what he has proposed is 6CO2 plus 12H2O in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll will provide C6H12O6 plus 6H2O plus 6O2. So this is what the equation which is modified by Robert Hill. So this is the equation, means modified simple equation for photosynthesis. By the process of photosynthesis, initially plants first produce what? Simple carbohydrates. These simple carbohydrates were later on converted into highly complex carbohydrates like starch and cellulose. And later on even plants can produce some compounds like proteins, fats, lipids, etc. These were also produced by plants. So this is the process of photosynthesis in which plant produces it, means through with the help of sunlight and some small micronutrients or small nutrients in the presence of sunlight. With the help of chloroplast plant is converting them into, initially first it is converting them into simple carbohydrates. These simple carbohydrates were further converted into highly complex compounds like what? Starch and cellulose. And even plants were able to produce products like lipids, fats, proteins, etc. So now we are going to perform one activity. So in this activity we want to prove that plants produce starch, no? So to prove that they produce starch or not, we are going to perform this experiment. Presence of starch. Aim of the experiment is what? Presence of starch. So what are the apparatus required for this? One test tube, methylated spirit, leaf, and also one beaker, water, Bunsen burner, tripod stand. We require the following apparatus. So, and we also need iodine solution or betadine solution and one petri dish to perform this activity. In this activity, initially what we are going to do, we are going to remove the chloroplast from the, green color, that is chloroplast from the leaf. So for this we are using methylated spirit. In the methylated spirit we dip the leaf and we boil it in the hot water. So when we perform this activity, what happens? The leaf will lose its green color, that is it loses chloroplast, understood? So the leaf will become pale in color. So once this pale in color leaf we observe, we need to remove it with a brush and place it on a petri dish and need to place 2 to 3 drops of iodine solution on the leaf. When we do this, immediately the leaf, we observe the following observation, that the leaf is turning into dark blue color. That means it shows iodine reacts with the starch and produces what color? Dark blue color compound. So this shows that the leaf possesses starch in it. So with the help of this experiment, we confirm that leaves produce starch, means the glucose simple compound will convert into complex molecule, like means glucose will convert into starch or cellulose sometimes in plants. To prove this the plant possesses starch, we have performed this experiment. With this we have completed our session. In the next video we will meet with a new topic. Thank you. Hope this video is useful for you. Please share and subscribe my channel.